Imagine a future where um, every living thing, from the tiniest microbe to the biggest tree, isn't just part of nature, but it's also logged into some kind of global digital network.
Yeah, and a future where we don't just watch ecosystems, but we actively engineer them. We're talking shaping DNA, using AI, deciding how things develop.
Sounds like something straight out of science fiction for some people. But for others, maybe it's the only way forward, the path we're already kind of rushing down to deal with a planet in crisis.
It's definitely a profound shift we're seeing, moving beyond that traditional conservation, which, let's face it, often feels like just putting out fires, right?
Wait.
Towards these powerful new tech and financial frameworks. They're designed to intervene on a scale we've never seen before. It's really about fundamentally redefining our whole relationship with the natural world.
Absolutely. So today on the deep dive, we are plunging into two really groundbreaking developments that are driving this shift. First, this idea of digital IDs and financial values for nature itself, things like nature IDs and biodiversity
And
credits.
second,
And second, these incredibly ambitious tech programs, like the ones being pushed by the British Advanced Research and Invention Agency, ARIA. They're aiming for, well, nothing less than managing the entire planet's biosphere using advanced genetics and AI monitoring.
okay, so our goal today is to unpack these big ideas, explore the potential, and it is potentially huge for both people and the planet, but also to look critically at the ethical tangles and the risks involved.
Exactly. We'll look at what our sources are saying about where environmental stewardship is headed and maybe most importantly, what it could mean for you listening right now.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so first up, this fascinating, maybe slightly unnerving world of digitizing and valuing nature. We're talking about the rise of nature units and these powerful new financial tools.
And right at the heart of this, you have this massive global digital monitoring system for biodiversity. Think of it like humanity trying to get collective eyes and ears on the entire biosphere.
Gathering data on a scale that honestly would have been totally unimaginable just a few decades back.
For sure. And it's not just one project either. Our sources point to several huge initiatives. One of the newest and really significant ones is Biotime 2.0. It actually launched just this past March.
Biotime 2.0. Okay, what is that exactly?
Well, it's not just a database. It's now the world's largest biodiversity time series database. That time element is crucial.
Time series, meaning it tracks changes over time.
Exactly. Its scope is kind of mind-boggling. It pulls together observations going back nearly 150 years, from 1874 all the way to 2023.
Wow.
Almost 12 million individual records covering over 56,000 species, 553,000 locations around the world. Marine, terrestrial, you name it. It gives us that invaluable long-term view of how life on Earth is actually changing, not just a single snapshot.
And it's not alone, right? There are others.
Right. It's joined by databases like the Living Planet Index, the LPI. They recently reported a really startling figure, a 73% average drop in monitored vertebrate populations just between 1970 and 2020.
73%, that's huge.
It is. And it gets worse in some places, 95% down in Latin America and the Caribbean, 85% down in freshwater ecosystems. Then you've got the Global Population Dynamics Database, GPDD, looking at long-term changes for specific species, and Predix, which maps how local biodiversity is responding to human impacts globally.
Okay, so why? Why build these massive digital eyes and ears? What's the end game?
Well, the key thing here, according to our sources, is that these datasets are essential for more than just understanding the problem. They're crucial for measuring progress towards goals, like the Sustainable Development Goals.
Like SDG 15 on life on land.
Precisely. They inform conservation policy, help pinpoint where interventions are needed most urgently, and even help predict future changes. They're being presented as completely indispensable tools in this ecological crisis, giving us the hard data needed for informed decisions.
Okay, so if the biosphere is being mapped in such incredible detail, the next step, maybe a logical one, maybe a controversial one, is assigning it financial value.
Right. Because once you can measure nature with that kind of precision, the conversation naturally shifts from just pure conservation towards, well, capitalization.
So not just protecting a forest, but giving it a market value that fluctuates, almost like a stock.
Sort of.
Mm.
Our sources talk about nature units emerging as a tool to weave the value of natural systems and what they provide ecosystem services directly into financial systems.
Yeah.
Platforms like Infragreen are exploring this.
And there are organizations setting this up.
Yeah, groups like the Organization for Biodiversity Certificates, OBC, and the Nature Positive Initiative. They're running pilot programs right now to develop the actual metrics and certifications for nature itself.
So what's the model here? Is there a precedent?
There absolutely is, and it's already a multi-billion-dollar global business. Carbon credits or carbon offsets.
Ah, right. Carbon trading.
Exactly. A carbon unit basically represents a certain amount of greenhouse gas emissions like CO2 or methane that's been avoided or prevented by some kind of climate project.
So companies buy these credits from, say, tree planting projects that soak up CO2.
Or from projects that distribute energy-saving cook stoves in developing countries, reducing emissions there. The promise is clear. It's pitched as a flexible, efficient way for companies or even countries to offset their own emissions by funding reductions somewhere else.
And I feel like there's always a but with carbon credits, this isn't exactly a universally loved solution, is it? It's actually surrounded by quite a lot of criticism.
That's putting it mildly. Our sources highlight really serious questions about effectiveness and, crucially, transparency. Do these projects actually deliver the promised results?
Or are they just, as some sources put it, speculations and empty expenditures, lacking real, verifiable scientific proof? There have been accusations of greenwashing, right, where the offset isn't nearly as big as claimed.
Definitely. And a major takeaway here is the critique around fairness, equity, and debt. Critics argue that monetizing the carbon footprint essentially means the bill gets paid by countries with fewer resources and often historically less pollution.
So, powerful, high-polluting nations might look clean on paper by buying offsets.
While poorer nations end up with a kind of carbon debt, maybe by agreeing not to develop resources like forests they might otherwise use, it raises big questions about who bears the cost and who profits.
Yeah, that's a serious ethical concern. One source, actually a young legal professional, apparently argued the carbon market needs a very serious rewrite and restructuring.
Calling for robust legal enforcement, transparent audits, and something they termed ethical capitalism to make sure it actually benefits the planet.
So it's not just about small tweaks. It's a call for a complete overhaul, stressing total transparency and real data. It really feels like a cautionary tale for this emerging biodiversity credit market, doesn't it?
Absolutely. While the idea of valuing nature financially is gaining steam, how it's done and the ethical fallout are clearly still huge points of contention.
Okay, so if putting a price tag on nature is one path, another equally ambitious, maybe even more ambitious frontier involves directly engineering the ecosystems.
Right. And this is where organizations like the UK's Advanced Research and Invention Agency, ARI, come in with this almost sci-fi vision for engineering ecosystem resilience.
Their starting point sounds pretty dire.
It is. ARIA's problem statement is quite stark. Ecosystems globally are collapsing, and what we're doing now just isn't enough to turn things around. They really emphasize that living things underpin everything, our food, climate, medicine, materials. It's an urgent call, saying the foundation of our existence is crumbling.
And this is where their vision gets really bold. They see engineering ecosystem resilience as maybe the most vital technical capability humanity needs to develop right now.
Their core belief is that if we combine that high-resolution measurement like those global databases we just talked about with really targeted interventions, we can actually halt the declines and eventually reverse them.
Leading to unparalleled human and planetary prosperity. That's a huge claim.
It is. They argue our current tools for measuring, predicting, and managing ecosystems just aren't up to the job. They see ecosystems as these complex, adaptive networks where small, smart changes could have massive positive effects. So the right tools could lead to incredibly effective interventions.
Okay, so what are these right tools they're envisioning?
ARI points to a convergence of really powerful technologies. Things like high-throughput genomics reading DNA fast, plus advanced AI, gene editing tools like CRISPR, robotics, new kinds of sensors, even something called accelerated evolution.
Accelerated evolution.
Yeah, speeding up natural selection processes. They see all this coming together in what they call a new integrative paradigm, a completely holistic way to manage the biosphere.
It sounds like a seriously comprehensive toolkit for planetary management almost.
It kind of does. It includes genetic manipulation, actually deciphering and editing the DNA of plants and animals to give them desired properties or guide how they develop.
So, like boosting keystone species through breeding or adding genetic diversity to populations that are struggling?
Exactly. Or even pre-adapting species to future climate conditions before those conditions fully hit.
Wow. And it goes beyond genetics.
Oh, yeah. They talk about industrial-scale artificial selection and breeding, hyper-accelerating evolution, essentially. And connecting back to the monitoring, ARIA also envisions a global network of sensors and robots for constant planetary surveillance.
With AI crunching the data.
Right, using AI for analysis and then decision-making about how to intervene further in ecosystems. Think about projects like physically moving animals to reconnect populations where you can't build corridors, or precisely wiping out invasive species before they gain a foothold.
Okay, this really pushes us into a deep dive on genetic engineering itself, its promise, but also its potential perils.
Definitely. Beyond RIA's specific vision, the broader field of GMOs, genetically modified organisms, aims to do things like make crops resistant to diseases, pests, tough weather conditions.
Leading to faster growth, longer shelf life, higher yields. Things like herbicide-resistant soy or corn that produces its own insecticide, the Bt toxin. The promise is cheaper food, more food security.
But interestingly, even ARIA, while championing these technologies, stresses the absolute need for surgical precision. They explicitly warn against repeating past mistakes.
No kind of mistakes.
They cite classic examples, like introducing cane toads in Australia or Nile perch into Lake Victoria, or the massive overuse of pesticides. All examples, they say, of broad impact decisions with insufficient risk assessment.
So even the proponents acknowledge the danger of unintended consequences.
Yes, there's a profound awareness there, which brings us to that fundamental ecological principle. Everything is connected to everything.
And our sources really hammer home the unpredictability here. What works in a controlled lab setting rarely translates perfectly to the wild, complex chaos of nature.
Exactly. Genes out in the environment aren't just stable bits of information. They interact with everything around them in nonlinear ways. You insert one gene for a specific trait.
And you can get unintended side effects.
Right. Unpredicted pleiotropic effects. It's like pulling one thread in a really complex tapestry. You think you're fixing one small thing, but suddenly other patterns change, or something else unravels entirely. A gene meant for pest resistance might accidentally reduce drought tolerance, for example.
And one of the biggest concerns seems to be genetic pollution, right? Creating super weeds.
A huge concern, this idea of uncontrolled gene flow, or introgression, basically. Genes from GM crops escaping into wild relatives. We've seen it happen.
Examples.
GM canola passing herbicide resistance to wild canola, GM rice mixing with wild rice, GM soy mixing with non-GM soy. You end up creating these new, super resistant weeds that are incredibly difficult to manage.
And it's hard to contain these genes once they're out there.
Extremely hard. Transgenes have shown up in non-GM fields even where there are moratoriums, like GM corn found in France. They've even been found in ports in countries where the GM crop isn't even grown, like GM rapeseed in Japan. Containment is a massive challenge.
And what about the impact on the soil itself and other organisms?
Also major concerns. Studies, like one by Novdanya on Bt cotton, suggested GM crops can seriously reduce soil biodiversity, harming beneficial microbes, decreasing vital soil enzymes, leading to what some researchers called dead soil.
Dead soil, that sounds catastrophic.
It's a profound degradation of the very foundation. And it's not just the soil. Those Bt toxins produced by some GM plants, they can be lethal to beneficial insects we rely on, like green lacewings and ladybugs, shortening their lives, reducing their fertility.
What about bees?
Yeah, potentially disrupting their digestive systems. And negative impacts have been seen on aquatic insects, earthworms too, all vital parts of the ecosystem.
So if we look at the bigger picture,
the widespread planting of these uniform GM monocultures, often needing intensive pesticide use, which leads to pests developing resistance anyway, that chemical boomerang effect, it breaks natural food chains and seriously unbalances agricultural ecosystems.
and there was even a hypothesis mentioned about climate.
A really intriguing, maybe slightly chilling one, that genetically modified bacteria, like Pseudomonas syringae engineered to prevent frost on crops, might stop doing their natural job of helping form ice crystals for snow and rain.
Potentially leading to less rain and snow, altering climate.
Potentially. It's a hypothesis, but it highlights the sheer scale of potential ripple effects from these seemingly targeted biological interventions. It's quite sobering.
Okay, wow, we have covered a lot of ground. From digitally cataloging every species to, well, genetically engineering life itself. Let's try to navigate the ethical maze this all creates, and importantly, maybe touch on some alternative paths to sustainability that already exist.
Yeah, the ethical dimension is huge. What really stands out is how digitalization itself, just as a massive sociocultural fact, is changing everything. It creates these new ethical nodes, new dilemmas.
Related to our values, how we relate to each other, even how individuals are managed in this digital world.
Exactly. Our sources point out it forces us to expand ethics beyond just human-to-human stuff. We now have to think about the ethics of humans interacting with these non-human systems, the digital ones, the engineered biological ones.
Which inevitably leads to the critical question: who controls the controls? Who sets the rules for this emerging technosphere?
That's the core ethical question.
Yeah.
How will digitized individuals or even digitized ecosystems live within it? Who governs the data? Who makes the life-altering decisions? Who benefits and who might be harmed or left behind? Will a few powerful players dictate the future of life on Earth?
Big questions.
Huge. And it means we desperately need ethical design baked in from the start. Clear standards, fundamental values like trust, privacy, basic human rights, these need to be embedded. There's a call for deep interdisciplinary thinking, even ethical forecasting, to try and get ahead of problems instead of just reacting.
Building an ethical framework proactively. Okay. But while these futuristic frontiers are being explored, it feels crucial to remember there are other ways, right? Establish paths to sustainability that aim to work with nature, not necessarily control it so intensely.
Absolutely. And our sources highlight several. Organic farming is a prime example. Its whole philosophy is about rejecting synthetic agrochemicals, GMOs, hormones. It focuses on building healthy soil naturally.
Using things like compost, beneficial microbes, cover crops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Relying on natural fertility, fostering ecological balance. It's about treating the farm itself as a healthy, self-sustaining ecosystem.
And then there's just traditional selection, right? Good old-fashioned breeding.
Classical breeding, yeah.
Yeah.
It's based on understanding natural heredity and variation, mobilizing the existing gene pool within a species to gradually improve crops and livestock over generations. And let's not forget, our sources point out, this method has actually fed the population of the entire Earth to this day.
A pretty strong track record.
Undeniably. It's a testament to working patiently within natural processes for centuries.
And there was a third approach mentioned, targeted factor correction.
Right. This is maybe a bit more technical, but still works within natural systems. It's about optimizing the conditions for growth, things like light, CO2 levels, soil nutrition, both minerals and organic matter, how efficiently plants use water and nutrients.
So, making targeted physical, chemical, or biological adjustments.
Yeah, using things like humic substances to improve soil structure, introducing nitrogen-fixing bacteria, using specific microbes to help break down rock and release minerals. It's all about improving productivity by restoring and enhancing natural cycles, working with biology and geology. It's a sophisticated but ultimately harmonious approach.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've explored these two really powerful, distinct paths for managing the planet's future. On one hand, the digital valuation and monitoring of nature, and on the other, this incredibly ambitious technological engineering of ecosystems.
Both offering potentially immense benefits given the environmental crisis we face, but both also presenting these profound ethical and ecological challenges. From the whole idea of monetizing nature and what that means for fairness, to the genuinely unpredictable consequences of widespread genetic modification.
The core tension seems to be balancing our urgent need to protect and restore ecosystems with the wisdom to understand the limits and the real dangers of our interventions.
Are we achieving that surgical precision RIA talks about? Or are we risking unintended harm and just repeating past mistakes, as both RIA itself and certainly the research on GMOs clearly warn us about?
It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? As we develop this incredible capacity to give every organism a digital ID, to engineer the very code of life, what does it actually mean to preserve nature anymore?
And maybe more fundamentally, in whose image are we ultimately trying to shape the planet and ourselves? Is this pursuit of control, however well-intentioned, leading us down a path where things like evolution